Tonight, demanding better from Toronto schools as shockwaves of war in the Middle East hit the GTA.
While some of these resources address anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, none mention anti-Palestinian racism.
Why a group of Palestinian and Jewish families pushed the TDSB to take a new approach.
This all revolves around money. It's a lucrative business for people.
Plus, hundreds charged, more than 1,000 stolen vehicles recovered. Why police say 2023 has seen a record number of car thefts.
Barnes,
and hype on the hardwood. We'll get you caught up on tonight's game as the Raptors get back in action. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. Hundreds of people gathered for a vigil at Queen's Park tonight to mourn the over 6,000 Palestinians reportedly killed in the Israel-Hamas war.
Over 6,000 civilians and Palestinians have been killed, over 1,000 of whom are children. We're here to ask for an immediate ceasefire.
The vigil was organized by the Palestinian Youth Movement. In addition to a ceasefire, they're also asking that humanitarian aid be allowed to enter the Gaza Strip. Now, before tonight's event, Jewish human rights organization B'nai B'rith called on Ontario's Sergeant at Arms to ban the, quote, hate fest, calling it a pro-terrorism rally. CBC Toronto asked the Palestinian Youth Movement for a response to those claims, but the group did not get back to us in time. Meantime, it has now been 2.5 weeks since Hamas's attack against Israel, pushing the decades-old conflict into the spotlight and in some cases into the classroom. There are new calls tonight for the TDSB to do a better job of addressing the Israel-Hamas conflict in Toronto schools. Ali Chiasson has that part of our coverage tonight.
This group of Palestinian, Canadian and Jewish parents gathered to call out the Toronto District School Board for what they believe is the erasure of the Palestinian experience amid the ongoing war.
The TDSB unequivocally and rightfully condemned the October 7th killing of Israeli civilians and clearly named the perpetrators of these attacks. What they did not do was unequivocally condemn the killing of Palestinian civilians.
For their part, the TDSB says they have and will continue to listen and address the concerns from communities including Jewish and Palestinian, and that their focus is on students feeling safe while providing outlets to report instances of hate.
While some of these resources address anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, none mention anti-Palestinian racism.
Meanwhile, anti-Semitism in schools is a big concern among Jewish families.
Well, we're hearing a lot of reports from parents of anti-Semitic incidents happening in schools across the GTA. It's definitely a concerning phenomenon. Our schools have a responsibility to be safe and inclusive places for all students. I think we want an environment where every child can be their full selves in the classroom and be supported and to create an optimal learning environment. I think that's the responsibility of the TDSB for all their students, no matter what their background is.
How would you grade the public school system in addressing these conflicts in school?
I wouldn't give us an A, but I would put us in the B range.
I spoke with Professor of Education Kathy Bickmore at U of T about exactly this.
You ask what teachers can do. They can listen. They don't have to pretend to be neutral as if they had no values. But they also need to practice what they preach about being respectful of multiple sides, recognizing the difference that's in the room.
But they can't do it on their own. Bickmore says school boards need to support teachers in that endeavor.
I mean literally time to talk and work together to think through in their own school community what's gone well, what's a problem, what some alternatives are.
How important is it to include those parent perspectives?
Huge, but all of them.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
For a living.
As a result of the conflict in the Middle East, there's also been a spike in hate crimes reported in Toronto. Today, the chief of police gave an update on how the service is going to address that increase.
We are presently resourcing a task force to bring together an investigative resource to look at this holistically across the city. so that we can have the best possible investigative outcomes and the best possible opportunities to disrupt this hateful behavior that is completely inconsistent with the values of Torontonians and indeed Canadians.
The latest police data shows that since October 7th, there have been 15 reported anti-Semitic occurrences and 5 anti-Muslim incidents. Chief Demkew says the numbers show a significant rise of hate crimes reported from previous years. He's committing to provide a monthly report on the issue at police board meetings. Now to Sault Ste. Marie, where police say the man behind the murder of 4 people, a woman and 3 children, had been involved in intimate partner violence investigations in the past. The tragedy is now renewing questions about why the province has not declared intimate partner violence an epidemic. Lorenda Redekop has that story.
A community in mourning in the midst of a police investigation that continues. At this home Monday night, police found 3 children, all shot and killed, ages 6, 7, and 12, along with a woman who was shot and injured, and the body of a man police say was the offender who'd turned a gun on himself.
Sault Police can confirm the offender has been involved in intimate partner investigations in the past.
Police say they found 2 firearms here, one long gun and one handgun. Monday night, they'd already responded to another 911 call 10 minutes earlier to a home 3 kilometers south, where police found a 41-year-old woman shot and killed. And police say a domestic violence complaint involving the suspect was recent.
There was a call in the days previous at one of the locations, yes.
The chief was asked whether intimate partner violence should be labeled an epidemic.
I'm a firm supporter that something has to be done to raise the awareness of the issue. And if it's a matter of putting a label of epidemic on it, then so be it. What it does is it draws attention to the issue that it's not simply a private family matter, it's a societal matter.
An inquest last year into the deaths of 3 women in the Renfrew County area, all killed by the same man, recommended the Ontario government call this type of violence an epidemic, something the government rejected. The Solicitor General was asked if the government might now reconsider. He didn't directly answer.
Today, our thoughts are with Sault Ste. Marie. This is a multi-governmental approach. Our government has made available over $55 million of grants, and this is something that we are going to continue to make sure that victim services are provided with the grants to help their communities.
And he says police cadets receive training on these cases. The opposition says the government needs to change course.
We can save these lives. What we do need to approach it with the seriousness that it deserves, and that means declaring it an epidemic. It means taking those, the recommendations seriously and acting on every single one of them.
That's as in Sault Ste. Marie. Police say they're following up on all leads about the man they say is responsible for the killings. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to Toronto's alarming rise in auto thefts, and police announcing today it has wrapped up Project Stallion with hundreds of charges and more than 1,000 stolen vehicles recovered. Dale Manukduk has that story.
The final numbers are in for Project Stallion, which ran from last November to the end of September this year.
Project Stallion has resulted in a total of 553 charges laid against 228 people. We've also recovered a total of 1,080 vehicles during this time.
Police say most of the stolen vehicles are high-end models. The total value of the cars recovered, nearly $60 million.
This all revolves around money, and it's a lucrative business for people. They're being resold, they're being shipped overseas.
Police say most of the people arrested were lower-level members of organized crime rings. They're also concerned about the number of young people involved in the thefts. Even though Project Stallion is shutting down, thefts are still going up. So far this year, there's been almost 10,000 auto thefts reported in the city. That's up over 2,000 incidents from the same period last year, and more than double the number from 2019 when the issue began to spike. Auto thefts are an issue across the GTA. This March, Peel Police recovered $10 million in stolen vehicles, and last December, York Regional Police investigators recovered $17 million worth of cars. Toronto police say most of the vehicles are found domestically, but thousands more end up overseas and will likely never be seen again. That's why Police Chief Myron Demkew says other players need to step up and get in the game.
That's really around manufacturers and around the entire shipping industry and how that is all administered. There are a number of players who have a role to play in stopping the flow of stolen goods from our country abroad. And the complexity of unpacking that and dealing with that from an enforcement perspective takes all hands on deck.
While Project Stallion is over, Demkew says he's in constant contact with other police agencies and combating auto thefts is still a top priority. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Breaking news to tell you about south of the border. This is a live look right now outside the hospital in Lewiston, Maine. 16 people have been killed after a gunman opened fire at a bowling alley and a bar in the town. The 40-year-old suspect is still at large, and authorities there are ordering residents and business owners to stay inside and off the streets. This is a developing story, and we will continue to track the very latest here in the CBC Toronto newsroom. Now back in Toronto, as housing affordability continues to grip the city, there was a fundraiser tonight trying to raise money and awareness about an initiative to build a cabin community for unhoused people. And the man behind the project is likely familiar to many of our viewers. Anam Khan has that story.
Many people know Khalil Seawright as the man who built tiny homes for homeless people living in tents during the fall of 2020. The wooden structures had a door, a window, and were lined with fiberglass insulation. Seawright gave them out for free. There was one problem. The city didn't approve of them on its property. Now, Seawright is ready for another project, hopefully this time with the city by his side.
We're in conversation with a few different councillors. So far, it seems positive.
CBC Toronto reached out to the city to ask about its involvement in the project, but it didn't respond. Still, Seawright's team, Two Steps Home, a not-for-profit organization, says it's working with the city to secure land to build 50 cabins. Tonight, Seawright hosted a screening of a documentary about his work building tiny homes, trying to raise money for his cabin community idea. The cabins are designed by Toronto architect John Van Nostrand. He built cabin communities in Ghana, Tanzania, and Indonesia to address similar housing crises.
We're trying to provide an opportunity between the shelter and permanent housing.
If you get the green light from the city tomorrow, how long would it be?
6 months.
The team says the entire 50 cabin community would cost $2.5 million, each one equipped with a kitchen, washroom, and dining area.
I see regularly people who are outside. I know that winter's coming and the encampments and the tents are not an answer.
This year, Toronto's shelter system has been operating at full capacity, and hundreds of asylum seekers were stuck sleeping on the streets, a problem that peaked this past summer, but it's not gone away.
There's 278 people in September per day in September turned away from shelters. We can't keep doing this. We have to find alternatives.
Given the success of similar cabin communities in Kitchener and Waterloo, Seawright believes the team is on the right track.
We're trying to carry that same sense of security into what we're building.
After a documentary about him aired this summer, he says support for his work picked up steam. And while he awaits to confirm a partnership with the city, he says he'll be relying on donations to make his dream a reality. Anam Khan, CBC News, Toronto.
Looking live outside right now, and it's 16 degrees and cloudy, a 60% chance of showers as well. Colette Kennedy is here with a first look at the forecast and more unseasonable warmth expected tomorrow. Hey, Colette?
Yeah, that's right, Chris. I don't know if we did something to deserve this, maybe not, but, you know, we're enjoying it, or at least hope folks are enjoying the very mild conditions. And all right, there are a few only with highs in the teens, but lots of 20s on the board or above here. 22 for St. Catharines, 21 Toronto, and towards Hamilton as well for that daytime high. And of course, some more consistent rain we've been seeing, especially through the afternoon hours into southwestern Ontario, and we're still seeing that that being an area where it's a little bit more organized, and then that streams eastward into the Niagara region. That's sort of been the train of action. Doesn't mean we haven't been seeing an isolated shower outside of that into the GTA and have that chance in the overnight hours. We still do, and I have it in the forecast. But this is just where it's more organized, and then it's this more consistent band that we have coming through tomorrow, kind of late morning into the early part of the afternoon. Once that passes through, we're likely going to see the clouds breaking up at least a little bit to allow some sun to come through, and so things will actually improve as we get into the later afternoon hours for tomorrow. So look forward to that, but have the umbrella around before that. A high of 21 tomorrow, Chris.
All right. Thank you, Colette. The Toronto Raptors picking up a win tonight in their home opener against the Minnesota Timberwolves. This season is a bit of a fresh start for the team with a new head coach and some new faces on the court as well.
Schroeder. Here's Anunoby, the corner three. Knocks it down.
Darko Rakovic making his coaching debut with the Raptors tonight. Nick Nurse was fired in the spring after 5 years and an NBA championship with the team. Toronto will also have to do without superstar Fred VanVleet, who now plays for Houston. But in addition to some new blood, stars like Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes remain on the team. Welcome back. New data shows a startling number of people are using food banks in this country, the highest level since Food Banks Canada started tracking usage more than 3 decades ago. Clara Pasica takes a closer look at the stories behind the numbers here in Toronto.
These Daily Bread food bank volunteers need to pack more boxes of food than were ever needed before. A report out today from Food Banks Canada reveals that across the country, food bank use increased by 32% compared to last year. And in Toronto, the numbers are much worse.
Here in the city of Toronto, that number sadly is 50%, the highest across the country.
The city is proving increasingly unaffordable to even those who are working. Neil Hetherington says in Toronto, about 35% of food bank users are working, double the national average.
People are working hard, but yet rents are so high, the cost of groceries is so high, they can't make ends meet, they need to turn to friends, family, and charity.
It's something this food bank volunteer and university professor has seen play out in her classrooms.
Their rent is so expensive, tuition has gone up, their families are not able to support them like I supported my children many years ago. They just don't have the resources. So the students, even though a lot of them are working, just don't have the funds.
The report indicates affordability struggles are affecting all age demographics. This North York Harvest Food Bank user says she turned to the food bank for the first time 4 years ago.
It's so hard, like living by myself, it is so hard to make that dollar stretch. And there's stuff I do have to go without. I don't want to, but I have to, which is unfortunate.
Food Banks Canada is calling the situation a full-fledged crisis and wants all levels of government to treat it like one.
In particular, we're asking for action on affordable housing. Housing tends to be the biggest expense most of us have each month, and people need to be able to afford to put a roof over their heads and feed their families.
Food banks tell us they're heartened to see so many volunteers step up to try and meet this enormous demand. But what they really want to see is government step up with more affordable housing and better social assistance.
The Ford government says it is investing $42 million more into the Canada-Ontario housing benefit, and it keeps looking for ways to improve access to housing. Also saying it increased Ontario Disability Support Program rates in July by 6.5% and invested millions more in student nutrition programs. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, let's get back to Colette with more on this unseasonable warmth. And Colette, we're not just talking a little bit above average, but a lot.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. It works out to about a 10-degree difference in terms of daytime highs and these overnight lows being so mild as well, in terms of these numbers being above seasonal. So there are your normal highs on the far side of your screen. And as for records, so for southwestern Ontario, like towards Windsor, those records, I was saying last night, you know, they're in the higher 20s, and we've got mid-20s for Toronto. In both cases, the best chance is going to be Friday. It's still going to be mild, and the record efforts come down a little bit, so we'll flirt with those. We'll kind of keep you posted on that. I also certainly want to keep you posted on this more organized rain band as it's coming through overnight tonight, but into tomorrow. So it's earlier morning hours in southwestern Ontario, Niagara region, but watch how that band will then rotate north and east. And so midday, we're going to see this. If you have lunch plans tomorrow in the GTA, have an umbrella around and a plan for some wet weather. And then back towards cottage country and beyond, there along the Bruce Peninsula, we could see some heavy rains and even some lightning strikes possible. But once that passes through, we get into this drier slot that hangs around into the afternoon and evening hours. And so with that, some nice conditions for that part of the day. And then the backside will come through with more rainfall. All right. So various conditions. If we just take it through the next 24 hours, you see those rainfall amounts. But once we push it into Friday, Barrie areas northward, that's where the really heavy rain will be. And southwestern Ontario, there's the potential for over 30 millimeters when we put it all together through a couple of days. Also, we'll be dealing with the winds, and those are stronger too, to the north and to the west of the GTA, and then along the north shore of Lake Erie towards the Niagara region. It's not as much of an issue from Toronto on towards Kingston. Overnight temperatures tonight, wow, those would be mild for daytime highs, right? And through the GTA, similar conditions with those scattered showers. How long does it last? A couple more days. And then we have that transition day on Saturday, Chris, and then cooler air begins to move it.
Just in time for Halloween. All right. Thank you, Colette. Care Center for a unique education fair.
We need to start with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and those conversations. So bringing young women and young men from equity-deserving groups was very important to our organization and our mission to not only educate them about the pathways that they could pursue in rewarding careers, but to do it in a fun, confidence-building, engaging way.
Dreamer Day is meant to help young people and women and girls explore careers in science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Thousands of high school students from across the province were there, getting pitched by over 50 companies from various fields. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, and we'll see you then.